Hello everyone. I want to provide these videos for you for the culmination of the work that we've been doing in the class is really evident in Project 2. We've done a lot. We've covered a lot, which I'll go over here shortly, but the one thing that I do want to talk about is Project 2 and Assignment 5, and some of you are coming to me with some issues that you're having, and I want to give you some debugging assistance here. Number one, the very first thing that you want to do, because the application is a CRUD application, again, that's the acronym that we use as a web developer. We're connecting to a database, and other developers use that when they're connecting to a data store as well too. CRUD stands for Create, Read, Update, and Delete. For our intents and purposes, CRUD, the C stands for create, is actually insert. We're going to insert records, create a record. Read is a select statement. Update, of course, is the update statement. Delete is the delete statement. The very first thing that you want to do is make sure that you actually have a connection. So open up MySQL Workbench, go to the Home tab, go to the wrench icon, and make sure that you actually have this local connection. Now, a couple things. You want to first create a local connection. So we talked about this before, but you just click New, and then here you would put when you click New, for the connection name, put local. For the host name, you would just put 127.0.0.1. Maybe that might have said too many 127.0.0.1, yes. And I'm looking at my keyboard while I'm talking, so I'll make this a little bit larger for you so you could see. And there's that. Now I have a different port. Your port will be 3306, and that's important when you start using these connection parameters in your files, like your context.xml file when you're logging in. And you're using the Java Server Pages application to actually manipulate the data, connect to the data store, and then manipulate the data. So the port here is 3308 that I have. Again, it's my port. I changed it, but yours is going to be 3306. That's a default port for MySQL. Username is going to be whatever your username and password, whatever you can connect to MySQL. Now, if you have previously installed AMPS, the default password for that, the default username is root, ROOT, lowercase. The password is lowercase MySQL. If you did a self-install or I should say an install for MySQL with another installation package, not AMPS, but maybe the MySQL standalone installation, then you'll have to use the connection parameters that you were provided for that. If you change them, you're just going to have to make sure, whatever they are, that when you test the connection, that you have a successful connection. Again, the other thing is make sure that we're not connecting to the CCI server, so we're connecting to standard TCP over IP, not SSH. Okay, so we're not connecting remotely, we're connecting locally. Now, what will happen is, first thing you want to do is make sure you test that connection. If you get anything other than this, anything other than the connection parameters are correct, or you cannot log in, there you have to stop and find out what the issue is, because you're not going to be able to go any further if you can't make a connection. Okay, so we have a connection. We're good to go there. Next, what you want to do is actually go to your ERD, your data store. And here you want to make sure you have a connection, but now you want to make sure that you have data in the database, and you can actually populate that database. So we're going to use that connection we have here, local. Click Next. And here are the four options that you want to make sure you have checked. Generate insert statements for tables. Gang, if you don't have that checked, no matter how good your database was created, including data, if you don't have this checked, you're not going to have any records. So you want to make sure you have that checked. Generate insert statements for tables. Drop objects before each create object, and that means tables, views, everything. So we want to start scratch and then drop the schema. Essentially, that's dropping the database. So we're going to drop the objects, drop the schema, and of course add show warnings for every DDL statement, data definition language statement. That means create, alter, and drop. So we're going to have add show warnings for that. All 4 of these should be checked. Click next. The only thing that should be checked here is export MySQL table objects. Nothing else should be checked. Click next. You can take a look at that, copy to clipboard if you want, and click next. And then that's what you should get. Forward engineered, finished successfully. Okay. Now, you don't need this anymore unless you want to have it up and then keep forward engineering it while you test fresh data. You could do that. I'm going to close this for now to get it out of the way there. I'm going to close this as well too. And the next thing I'm going to do is open up MySQL. I have it pre-filled already, so I didn't waste any time. And I'm going to log in. And I just want to double check to make sure that I have data here. So I'm going to use mjoet. I could show databases, but or I should say show tables. And all I really care about is customer. Select all from customer. And I got 5 records. Okay, so I'm good to go. I got data here. By the way, I do have 0 filled data for my zip code. Just doing some testing there. As we mentioned in class, if you took my database courses, there are zip codes that have zeros in front of the, they have zeros. They're prefixed by zeros. There's a few zip code areas that are prefixed by zeros. So if you're actually going to make a production-ready application, you would have to take that in consideration. But this is just for testing purposes. Okay, now what I'm going to do is we're going to go review this application here. And so we started off here just with a basic foundation, something that you can use for prospective employers. You're going to have, you could use this for your online portfolio, or you could add this to your online portfolio. And we began with assignment number 1. Really, that was just setting up the installations, the JDK, Tomcat, and Bootstrap framework, and you put some images in here indicating that you had those screenshots, and you also had to post these to Bitbucket, so you have some distributed version control system experience as well too. For all of these assignments, you had to submit your work to Bitbucket. Assignment 2 was where we installed MySQL. This is the assignment that you want to go back to make sure, find out what were those connection parameters that you used. If you're ever having a connection issue with MySQL, go back to this assignment and find out what those connection parameters were for the servlets. You got database connectivity here, and you were ready or getting ready for the data-driven application. The next assignment was assignment 3, where we actually created the database, populated the data, and also did the same thing as far as pushing your files and information up to Bitbucket. We then went to Project 1. Project 1 now is where we started with basic client-side validation, and we were using regular expressions. Gang, always remember that when you're doing a web app like this, you want both client-side and server-side validation. The client-side validation takes a load off the server, and the server-side validation is necessary in case the user has a JavaScript turned off, to either by accident or on purpose to try to avoid the data validation. So we have to have both client-side and server-side validation. Notice the URLs. So for assignment 1, it had its own subdirectory, A1 index.jsp. Assignment 2 had its own subdirectory, index.jsp. Assignment 3, index.jsp. P1 P1 subdirectory, index.jsp. Then when we come to A4, notice that we have some business logic here. Okay, it's there A4, A5, and P1. The form is customerform.jsp, and we're adding a query string here That is the values, the key value pairs after the question mark that's used in the form. So we're accessing the file, customer.jsp. We're attaching, we're suffixing the file name with the question marks, which indicates that after that we're going to have a query string, which is just a key value pair. The key here is assign underscore num for the assignment number, and the value is A4. You'll see the same thing when we do A5. It's still going to customer form, and then P2. You see it's still going to customer form, but the business logic based upon the key value pair, A4, A5, P2, key value pair, the key is assignment num, and again the value is A4, A5, P2. We're changing the header based upon that logic that's inside of customer form. You also notice customer form.jsp. You also notice that for project 2 we have a link here as well too, and I'll show you the code for that. We're going to do a few things with this particular application. We're going to do some modifications to it, and we're also going to do something called code refactoring. Now we are going to do definite modifications. When we make modifications that change the external functional behavior, that's not code refactoring. Code refactoring essentially is a process where the internal structure could be changed without affecting the external functional behavior. In other words, I could create for code refactoring, instead of putting everything in sequential coding, using just putting everything in one file, I could create a function file and then make calls to that function file, what we call a class library or a function library. I can make calls to that function library or class library. That's not changing the external behavior. All it's doing is changing the internal structure, but it maintains its same external behavior. Here we're doing both. We are changing the external behavior, as you can see right here. We didn't have this in assignment 5, display customers. Okay, so we're doing both. We're doing some modifications, which I'll show you in the code, and we're also doing some code refactoring. All right, gang. First thing is, I want to go back to my data, show you there's no tricks up my sleeve. Do a select all from customer, 5 records. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this web application, show you how it's going to work, and then we're going to go back to the through the code. Now, there's one other thing I want to show you, and that is I want to show you some other files that we have associated here. You're familiar with customer form. This index, by the way, this index page is for the main page, right? That's the index page for that. Customer form is used for assignment 4, 5, and project 2. There are a couple new files here. Customer.jsp, modify.jsp, and we have thanks. We're going to keep most of thanks, but there's some modification in thanks as well too. And we did do some changes to customer form, which I'll show you as well too. But we have customer, modify, and thanks, and I'll show you how those files will work as I navigate through this application. There's one other here that you don't need to worry about. That's EL. It's just a test file that I was used for testing some expression language syntax. We've used expression language in assignment 5 already. And expression language is really neat because in the olden days of Java Server Pages, circa 1999, 2000, that was 1999 is when Java Server Pages first came out. You had to serverless and Java Server Pages was in its infancy, and you had to mix Java with HTML. It got really messy. When you use expression language, you could actually keep all the code concise, and it's really easy to read, and it just makes the code a lot cleaner. But again, you don't have to worry about this file. This is just a test file. The files that we'll be using are introducing in this assignment, project 5, is a customer modify, and then we're going to make some changes to customer form and to thanks. Okay, here, as you can see, we're in customer form, and I'm going to open that up right now like this so you can see the code. We're going to go over the changes in the code as well too. So I'm going to keep this right here, and I'm going to make it a little bit larger and I'll change the font right now and make it a little bit larger, but I will open it up so you could see all the code. Alright, what's happening here? Well, first thing is you're going to have the same functionality as assignment number 5. I'm just going, let's see, do I have a John Doe here? No, I don't, so I'll put a John Doe here. Okay, and it populated, put a balance of $300, and then total sales of 1,000, and we'll even put some HTML here to try to see if we can do some cross-site scripting on this application and mess up the database and get some data. So what we're going to do is just hit submit. You'll see it goes to, well, it's processed in our customer admin page, but if you remember in our customer admin, all it did was redirect it to the thanks.jsp file. And you would think that all we're on the customer admin servlet, but we're not, because it doesn't have .jsp. You know it's a servlet, right? But we're not. We're actually in the thanks.jsp file, and customer admin was a servlet that forwarded that data to the thanks.jsp file. Okay, so that's that. Let's take a look at our data. Select all, and you see that we have a 6th record. You also see that it pulled in and escaped the HTML character entities. It escaped them and put it into the database because we want to keep that, but we don't want it to be executed. So we used a method to prevent cross-site scripting in the thanks.jsp file. I'll show that again shortly, but you already saw that in assignment number 5. Now I got 2 things I could do here. I could use the back button, and I could go back here and fill in some more data. Or what I could do is hit the return button in thanks.jsp, and I'll show you that. And that will go to the form, to an empty form as well. Notice it's an agnostic, if you will, an agnostic header. So I'm not associating it with any particular assignment. Now, if you want to do that, you can. I kept it just my online portfolio so we can add data to this form. But if you want to associate it with P2, whatever assignment you want to, probably P2 would be the better one because that's a culminating assignment. You could do that, but I just kept it generic. Okay, did that. So we have our add functionality from A5. Now what you didn't see in A5 is how to, let me open up this window here, to display data. So here I could display data. I'm displaying these 5 records. Now again, make sure that don't get fooled by thinking that your data is in here in the database because it went to the thanks page. I'm sure at least a few of you had that experience where you thought the data was entered, you went to the thanks page, you got the data values that you submitted in the form, everything was copacetic there, but when you did a select all, you didn't see the new data. So always go to the data repository to double check, or I should say to single check, that you actually have data in there. Make sure that's your first place to go to make sure that you actually have an added record or a modified record or a deleted record. Regardless of what the web app says occurred, always go to the database to double check. Okay, I'm going to return, and again, return just means to, if I want to fill in another record. I'm going to go to display customers, again, going through the application to show how it works, I could click on the Add button and add records here. Notice that I have it automatically default to display what the user needs to enter there. So that's from the Add button. Now here I could edit. I'm going to edit the first one just to show you what will happen. So I'm going to just put a 2 here for Billy Bob 2, and I could also put some more cross-site scripting in here if I wanted to. Try an EM tag like this, update it, and as you can see, the modifications were correctly made. Now this is pulling in right from the database, so it's not transferring variable values. It's pulling right from the database, and you could double check that by just doing select all, and you could see that the first record, Billy 2, has been changed, as well as the notes section right here. Again, it's a good thing to always just double check your work from the data source itself, but this is pulling directly from the database. Okay, so we added data, we selected data. We have in other words, we have the create portion, the C of CRUD, right? We created a record. We read the records using our select statement here. I'm going to show you how we do that. And by the way, gang, this page is actually modify.jsp. This is actually this page right here. Why is it modify? Because we can modify. You can name it whatever you want. I just selected modify because we could modify the data here. Notice what it looks like here, though. Just another way of faking out a potential hacker, because they don't realize we're actually on the modify page, not in customer admin servlet. We're actually on the modify page. We modified it, we edited it. Now here, when I edit, notice here, and I'm going, and I could have made this so it went to customer form, and actually in the beginning I showed you some expression language that we were using, and I'll show it to you again right here. Let me max this out here, or make it a little bit larger. In our code, we actually did use some expression language right here. Now, initially I was going to have the form go back. Notice that it's the same form, right? If I click on P2, it's empty, right? Because it's just setting this key value pair to go and show the project 2 header. It goes to customer, but there are no data associated with it. We went through this logic before in assignment number 5. Remember, gang, by the way, we're using the core prefix. Make that just a tad bit larger. We have to have that tag library, the URI. Remember, that's a URI, gang. Let me make that larger even so you don't get confused. Right there. A couple of you made a mistake before, and I would say it's my mistake, because if it's not larger, you won't see that that's URI, not U. And some of you put URL because you thought it was URL, which is would be an easy mistake, but it's URI. And what it's doing, it's saying that we're going to go to the Sun Java JSP site to get the core library, and then what we're going to do when we get the core library, we're going to prefix everything with C. It's just an easy way of prefixing everything, and so we can use that C in our code. So you'll notice here we're using the C, and that is actually for getting the core library. We can create variables using the set keyword, our var equals enum, and then we're getting from the enum that's being passed, we're going to get that assignment number in the parameter, remember, in the URL. So when I'll make this a little bit smaller now so that we can, so we could see more code. And I got comments here for you. This didn't change, by the way, gang. None of this actually changed. I'll just show you what did change when we move on to the changes between A5 and P2. But this is just capturing the user's query string, the key value pairs. So notice the parameter, that's a keyword there, param, and again we're setting a variable called enum, and we're going to use the param property. We're going to get the key assignment num, and then based upon that, and we put that value, we put whatever's in the assignment num key, we're going to assign it to the variable enum. So if enum contains, and here we're just doing a choose. So essentially, what we're doing is we're going through. It's kind of this is really a decision structure here. And what we're doing is testing the enum here if it's null or equal to 0, and then we're going to indicate a message there. Here we're saying we want assignment 4 header, so we're going to include assignment 4 header. Here we want assignment number 5. Where the user clicked past A5, so we want the assignment number 5 header. Here, same thing with P2. Okay, and then otherwise, if it's none of those in that decision structure, then we're just going to send the user back to the main page. So if they try to get in here and they're not passing any correct values, we're going to send them back to this main page. Okay, now I want to go back to display customers. The last thing I want to show you before I go more into the code is the delete. Now the first thing you want to do in delete, and again, gang, remember this is modify.jsp. When we click on edit, this page is actually customer.jsp. It's getting the values for the customer, which I'll show you in another video. So all those values are being passed to customer. Again, it's being hidden here. It goes through the customer admin, or I should say it goes through the customer servlet that we created. We made some modifications to that too. Also changed the name, which I'll show you in another video. But it's going to be processed, and it passes this to the customer.jsp page. But again, we're hiding that because it looks like that we're in the customer admin servlet, and we're really not. We're passing the values to the customer.jsp file. And as I mentioned, or I was got sidetracked here, but as I mentioned initially, I was going to have you do all of the notice when the user initially comes to this page, P2, the data is not filled. Now what we could have done and had all the processing edit, we could have gotten back to this customer form and had all the processing done in the customer form, like I was going to initially have you do. And that's why I had the expression language syntax right here to populate F name, L name, street, city, state, and zip. But that was going to get a little bit clunky and messy because here it would have had to function, and we could have done it, but it would have required a bit more logic to include, and it would have gotten a little messy. And I want to keep the files clean. If you want to do that on your own, you're more than welcome to do that. But when the user submitted a form here, they actually went to the customer admin and passed a value, a hidden field called add customer. So this particular form, customer form, this file right here, customer form.jsp, was going to pass the add customer value from the name attribute. And that would have been passed to the customer admin, well, our customer servlet essentially, right? Our customer servlet, and then processed there. But to make things simpler, instead of putting all the business logic in the customer form page. The editing of the customer, or user if you will, is going to be in the customer.jsp file. Again, I'll show that in another video. Customer form is just for the logic of what assignment it is. A4, A5, P2. Notice these are all still using the customer form and the query string. But it only is used here for processing the insert portion, the add functionality, the C of the CRUD, the create a record functionality. When we want to modify it, we're going to do that in the customer.jsp file. And then here, this is actually modified.jsp, because from modified.jsp, this page right here, we can actually edit and delete. Now, I showed you the editing. Again, when I click on that, this goes to customer.jsp. If I delete it, it will just delete the record, and I'll show you how that logic is handled as well too. But you don't want to just delete the record. What you want to do is warn the user in advance. Do you really want to delete the record? So we have that logic put in place as well too. And so you'll see that when I click cancel, it cancels, but if I delete it and I click OK, that first record will be deleted, and it goes back to this page. So it goes back, after it gets processed, it goes back here to modified.jsp. When I make a modification, again, I'll call this Bobby2. I'm just going to modify that one field. When I call that, when I update it, it goes to the servlet. It processes the update. It'll make a modification to that, and then it will go back to modified.jsp. And you'll see how that logic works out too. You'll see that it made the change. Okay, gang, we talked pretty much everything about the processing. You see that what's new in Project 2. The only thing I'm going to finish off with now is the customerform.jsp file and show you what has changed here. For one, it's still, we're passing this data to customer admin. The only other thing that changed is we added a link. Now here's the link that we added. And again, you could see it right here. So make sure you add that link. And that's right above the form. Just put a link in there. The reference is going to be a reference to the servlet, customer admin, and it's going to say display customers. I wrapped it in P tags so that it would be on its own line there. That's why I did that, and it's centered as well too. So that's that. That's the only thing that we have to add there for this file, customer form. That's the only thing. What I just opened up here, customer form, and we added this link. Moving down, you can see that everything else has remained here, and I'm not going to go into the data validation because we've done that in another video. So gang, I'll end with this, and we'll start off with another video and talk about the rest of the code. See you in a bit.